Now we want to get you to the State Department, where moments ago, spokesperson Heather Nauert said the U.S. has proof that Syria was behind the chemical attack on civilians. Let's listen to that.
Sharing information, intelligence included, and we can say that the Syrian government was behind this attack. We talked about this the other day. The White House has addressed this as well.
What is this?
Hey, thanks. Hi, Michelle.
So I think it was on Tuesday when we last had a briefing, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it was on Tuesday when you said, when you were asked about the OPCW and is the administration, or should the administration wait to get those findings? And you emphasized the fact that there's already intel that chemical weapons were used. So what can you say on the state of that? Has the State Department's knowledge of what this was, or that it was chemical weapons, increased since 2 days ago? How would you say the level of proof has changed?
Well, let me start by addressing the OPCW. My understanding is that the OPCW arrived, it was either yesterday or today, tomorrow in Syria to try to collect some information.
So
they are simply the body, the OPCW, the one that collects some of the information and determines the exact substance that was used. On Tuesday, when we last met, I talked about how we know that this was a chemical weapon that was used in Syria. The exact kind or the mix that we are still looking into. There are some television shows out there in the United States that have started to ask, well, why aren't we releasing all of this intelligence information right now? A lot of this stuff is classified at this point, so those things we're going to hold pretty close to the vest.
Well, based on the words that you said on Tuesday, would you say that that's when the U.S. knew that this was Syria? I mean, would you say that there was proof on Tuesday?
I'm not going to say which day we absolutely knew that there was proof. The attack took place on Saturday. We know for a fact that it was a chemical weapon. We know that there are only certain countries, like Syria, that have delivery mechanisms and have those types of weapons.
Okay, well, would you say today, though, that the U.S. has proof that this was the Syrian regime?
Yes.
Okay.
And we continue to look at the information. We continue to gather information and further assess it. We don't have the information to be able to provide. We aren't able to provide all of this publicly at this point because it's sensitive.
So are we waiting for the OPCW then to?
We had said before, and this has been the position of the U.S. government. Sarah Sanders has said this as well, as has the president and others, that we believe we know who is responsible for this. We believe we know that chemical weapon was used. We will still wait for the OPCW, the OPCW will still formulate its facts and its findings, but that still does not determine, the OPCW does still not determine the responsibility. They just determine the substance.
There won't be any action taken?
We
covered this on Tuesday, extensively. No, we did. We can go back to the
a quick
thing.
follow-up. Even the Secretary of Defense was not conclusive in pointing the finger at the Syrian regime.
I can tell you this. Syria is responsible. We are all in agreement. I have also seen the Secretary of Defense's remarks as well. We are assessing various sources. Different government agencies and departments have different types of sources by which we gather information. So DOD has certain kinds of sources, State Department has different kinds of sources, and other agencies and departments have various sources. We will take a look at all of this information as it comes in, and we have to remind you that this is a dynamic situation and it's ongoing, but we're continuing to look into everything. Okay, Elise, go right ahead. Sorry.
At what level of confidence are you that that Syria was responsible? I mean, there's having proof and believing that they did it, and then there's incontrovertible proof and a high level of confidence and assurance.
A very high level of confidence. Hi, Barbara.
We verify the intelligence coming in?
I'm not going to be able to give you information about the intelligence that we're gathering on that.
But you've got your own, you've independently verified that there is
the United States government has its own sources of information. We have been assessing this thoroughly since this took place on Saturday.
Heather, can you say, so we saw that President Erdogan of Turkey spoke to President Putin. He kind of seemed to suggest that there was some kind of discussions behind the scenes. Then we saw President Macron speak to President Putin. Are there discussions, like either directly or indirectly, with the Russians about next steps and what the U.S. is planning and deconfliction or anything?
I don't have any conversations on the part of the State Department to read out regarding Russia, so I'm not aware if we've had conversations with Russia at a high level. Perhaps we have at a lower level.
Even if it's not direct with the United States, but
Yeah.
is it fair to assume that discussions are going on with the Russians about how the U.S. and its allies will have to respond to this? Because it definitely seems as if initially there was no conversations, and now there seem to be messages being passed back and
Well,
forth.
look, I think it's obvious that this is a messy region of the world. That country is very complex. There are lots of actors and things going on in it. We've had numerous conversations with the French, the British, the Saudis, the Israelis, and others. And so what information exactly is contained in those conversations, I'm not aware of. I know the White House had issued a readout. I don't happen to have that handy on the conversation between the British and also the U.S. and the French.
Talk about the involvement of Turkey, because it does seem as if President Erdogan...
You've been listening there to State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert discussing the alleged chemical attack in Syria. She says there that Syria is responsible for that attack. She says the State Department has a very high level of confidence of this based on intelligence and evidence that they have been able to obtain. She also noted that it is still a very dynamic situation. We'll